Today, I'm going to be a bit bold in my message. Because after all, I have home court advantage. A couple of disclaimers before we get started. After all, I am a lawyer. Disclaimer number one, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a theologian. I didn't go to seminary. I do not have any special ecclesiastical insight into what I'm going to speak to you about today. What this is just the outcome of time spent in personal reflection, study, and prayer. What this is about is more for me than it is for you. Disclaimer number two, this message has nothing to do with politics, religion, or the Blazers. What it does have to do with is civility and how we treat each other. How we treat each other in our discourse, in our relationships, and in our interactions with each other. It seems that we live in some of the most divisive and divided times in our history. And somewhere along the way, we've discarded basic concepts of listening, kindness, and respect. Author Judith Martin is better known as Miss Manners. She says that civility is the foundation of everything. How can we have respect, courtesy, and thoughtful dialogue if we don't have civility first? Now, I'm going to say this up front. Civility is not complacency. We all have our own values, principles, positions, and opinions, and we defend them vigorously. But how we do it is what civility is about. And so in Ephesians 4, Paul gives us instruction on civility, that as children of God, we are called to be civil. Therefore, as a prisoner of the Lord, I urge you to, and the English Standard Version says, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you are called to the one hope that belongs to your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Stop there. Let's pray. God in heaven, we thank you for your word. And we invite your presence here today as we open it and explore your instruction to us that are called. Amen. Verse 7, but grace has been given to each one of us according to the measure of God's gift. You may have seen this in the news this week. This is the Happy Camper food cart. It is owned by Scott and Julie Hakes, who are members of the Ohana Church. It is run by their daughter, Brianna. The Happy Camper food cart is located at the intersection of Southwest Bancroft and Moody in downtown Portland. What makes this significant is that on the opposite corner of Bancroft and Moody is the Portland office of the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office. If you've been following the news for the last 5 weeks, there has been an encampment of protesters there protesting the immigration policies of the federal government. Last week, the Hakes shut down their food cart because for 3 weeks, their daughter Brianna was subjected to harassment, profanities, stalking, and threats of violence. For her safety, they had to do that. What did she do? She sold food to an employee of ICE. Incivility is all around us. Division and partisanship in this country is nothing new. But somewhere, our culture has abandoned civility, where today it's I'm right, you're wrong. And people are demeaned, derided, and ridiculed for who they are, what they believe, why they believe what they believe, or for just doing their job. Politicians and celebrities are mutilated in effigy by other celebrities and artists. We've gotten bitter and angry. And not just bitter and angry with people that disagree with us. Sometimes we get bitter and angry with other people who aren't as bitter and angry as we are. As if that's some sort of weird metric of how much we care about an issue. 2007 saw the emergence of social media. And if you remember, Facebook's slogan back in 2007, 2008 was a place to connect. Right? It was the virtual water cooler where you could come together online and connect with friends and share vacation stories and baby pictures and family events. And here we are in 2018. And on social media, you can follow a discussion on any given topic. And in real time, watch friendships come to an end. Watch relationships terminate. Because you support this policy, because you believe in this, because you voted for this person, because you patronize this business, we can't be friends. Discussions dissolve into demeaning insults, and relationships are destroyed. This is not what God called us to be. Boys and girls, how many of you go to PAES? Any PAES? All right. How many went to PAES? There we go, that's better. Okay. PAES, went to PAES 8 years, and I remember in first grade, my best friend, Eric Dahl, challenged me to climb the Monkey Bar Dome. All of you that went to PAES, you know what I'm talking about. It's a landmark. He challenged me to climb the Monkey Bar Dome, and he said, "No, you can't do that." I said, "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "Yes, I can." So at recess, Eric and I bolted out the door and ran to the monkey bars, and I climbed almost to the top, fell, and Eric said, "See, told you so, see." Well, determined, I got back on, climbed to the top, and made it to the top, and looked down at Eric and said, "See, told you so." There is nothing like incivility, and it starts at such a young age. We see it all around us. The dictionary definition of civility is politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech. Politeness and courtesy in behavior or speech. The Latin origin of the word civility actually comes from the Latin word civilis, which means person or citizen. So there it is. I mean, in the root origin of the word, We are civil by being human beings. And from here, we derive the basic code of social interaction and how we treat each other. How does the Bible define civility? Now, the Bible is full of instruction on how to treat each other, and I'll be honest, in preparing this message, I really agonized over what passage to tag onto this message. And so here were the top contenders, and they're familiar to you. There's, of course, Matthew 7:12, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, the golden rule. Matthew 22:39, love thy neighbor. 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, love is patient, love is kind, etc. Isaiah 1:18, come, let us reason together. Seemed timely and appropriate. I even wrestled with this, Proverbs 18:2. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Let that sink in. But here we settle on Ephesians 4. And I chose Ephesians not just for Paul's instruction as to what civility is, but for the historical background, the historical context. Paul is writing to the church in Ephesus, and it's a church in conflict. The conflict is between the early Christians in Ephesus and artists and artisans in Ephesus. The artisans, they create for their livelihood. But what was the major issue of the conflict? Idols. The artisans were making idols and selling them in the temple. And the Christians were taking a moral stand against idolatry. That was their position. But things were getting out of control. Things had gotten downright hostile. And so Paul, from prison, writes to the church in Ephesus, and he uses some pretty strong language. Get this. He puts it in the context of a calling. As a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life, walk in a manner worthy of the calling you have received. Let's stop right there. This isn't just ticky-tack advice. This isn't just Paul saying, hey guys, come on. Paul is saying, there is something special here. You have been called. You have been given a special assignment. Live up to the worthiness of that call. And it actually is literally a weighty admonition, because in the Greek, worthy is axios, which means to be equal in weight. So to live up to your calling is what Paul is using to emphasize this point. When I was a student at Pacific Union College, my junior year, I was elected Student Association president, and my predecessor said to me, has Dr. Maxwell had the talk with you yet? Malcolm Maxwell, longtime president of Pacific Union College. I said, no, I haven't met with Dr. Maxwell yet. She says, he's going to have the talk with you. Okay. Well, Dr. Maxwell did call and scheduled an appointment to meet in his office. And if you remember, some of you remember Malcolm Maxwell. He's this tall, elegant, dignified, regal man with this deep bass voice, very stoic. I don't think I've ever seen him without a suit and tie. And I've even played golf with him, and I think he wore a suit and tie. And we met in his office, and And it was a different experience. And he kind of broke out of his mold. And after a bit of chit-chat, he said, I want to tell you something. By being elected to this position, you now represent the college. He said, I represent the college as an institution. You represent the college as a student. When people look at you, they're looking at the entire student body of the college. Live up to that calling. And actually, I didn't realize it until I was preparing for this message that Dr. Maxwell was quoting verbatim Ephesians 4. And as I walked out of Dr. Maxwell's office, I think I literally grew. That I should be worthy of the calling to which I received. So Paul knows that division and incivility in the church sows deep, deep seeds and can have a bad effect on the people and therefore the mission of the church. And that is why Paul is writing this. So we may think that incivility is just rude behavior, but its impact has an effect both psychologically and physiologically. So let me just show you, tell you about this. Georgetown business professor Christine Porath conducted a study on workplace incivility. Okay, we experience rude behavior, but actually does it have a causal effect on work outcome? And the results that she found were actually quite incredible. People who experienced incivility were less motivated, 66% cut back work efforts, 80% lost time worrying about it, 12% even left their job because of incivility. But her research revealed this. It's not just people who experience incivility, but it also happens to people who just witness it. People who witness incivility had the same negative effects on their work outcome. The high-tech company Cisco Systems got a hold of this study, and they did their own internal assessment on workplace incivility. They found that workplace incivility was costing them $12 million a year. It's real. She went on, so Dr. Porath went on to say, well, if it's happening in the workplace with people who experience it and witness it, what about just words? What if people are just exposed to words? So what she did, she took two groups of people. One group of people had a list of words given to them. They had some rude trigger words included in this list. Impolite, interrupt, bother, obnoxious, those types of words. The second group didn't have any of those trigger words. After they got those words, they were told, okay, put together some sentences using these words. After they put together the sentences, they were assigned certain simple tasks to do. Interesting. Group number one that had the trigger words performed 5 times worse than group number 2. They had problems performing the tasks. They were missing information that was right in front of them. They took longer to make decisions, and they made significantly more errors. Just from seeing words. So what this revealed to me is that incivility is actually a bug. And we become carriers just by being around it. And it isn't just confined to the workplace. We can find it at home, at school, online, at a business, anywhere. It affects our emotions, our motivations, our performance, and how we treat others. So if mere words can have this kind of impact, ask yourself, are you a carrier or the inoculation? Because Paul then gives his instruction on civility. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Seems like very similar characteristics to 1 Corinthians 13, but how do we put it into practice? Well, four things that I can gather from Paul's instruction. First is humility. Now, we think of humility as kind of a, well, I'm not worthy and I don't deserve this. Yeah, that actually is false humility, if you ask me. Humility in this context is the first basic step of civility. Humility acknowledges the existence and dignity of another person, that they are also a child of God. But it is also the acknowledgement that there may be another perspective, that there is a different perspective than your own. And you think, okay, well, you know what? I can do that. I can listen to another point of view. I'm actually going to take it one step further. And I think some of you aren't going to like this. Humility also involves seeing another person as your moral and intellectual equal. Humility involves seeing the other person as your moral and intellectual equal. Think about that. If you are engaging in discourse and you don't have that perspective, what is it easy to do? Just discard them. Discard what they have to say, discard their arguments, maybe even discard them as a person. But what it also does, if you see somebody subordinate to you, is it makes it easier to instruct them. You're wrong. And let me tell you why. Never in the history of human discourse has any value been added because of condescension. So, with humility also comes the second component, which I think is so basic also, is listening. Now, I am not talking about mindless, passive, I am just going to sit here and wait until you're done speaking, listening. In order to listen to one another, we have got to be active and extend the respect of hearing the other perspective. When I ran for the Oregon legislature in 2010, part of the routine is you go door to door and canvass for votes. But it's also an opportunity to go and listen to what concerns people have in the community. What campaign consultants will tell you is don't go bother knocking on doors where you know there's the vote's not going to be there, because when you go canvass door to door, there's a voter list that you have, and you can see the name, the address, their voter registration, issues that they care about. And they will tell you, the campaign consultants will tell you, just don't bother going to a voter's house where they're probably not going to vote for you, just because that's time where you could spend going to a door to an undecided voter's house. I didn't subscribe to that because I thought, if I'm running to represent the entire community, well, then I should meet the entire community. Well, I walked up to this house, and by the way, so I needed to add the important part of this. So when I would go door to door, my son Reagan was just born. I'd put him in the baby Bjorn, so it's basically like a baby backpack, but it's on the front, and you carry them around. And so I would go door to door with him hanging on in front of me. I don't think you remember that. It's too young. And so it was a great conversation piece because, you'd go to a door and maybe they wouldn't be receptive, but they say, "Oh, wow, cute baby." Well, I'm going door to door, and this house obviously is not going to be a friendly voter house because I can tell by the bumper stickers and lawn signs in the front of the house, this is not going to be a friendly voter house. But I'm going up anyway because as a candidate, I'm here to listen. So I knock on the door, and nice lady opens the door, and I hand her my campaign brochure, and she sees who I am and perhaps what party I'm with, and nice lady becomes kind of cranky old lady, and she says, "Now that's just disgusting. Exploiting your little baby like that for your own political ambitions, that's just shameless." So I'm thinking, well, how do you respond to that? Well, being kind of the irreverent smart aleck that I am, I said, "Well, ma'am, actually, this isn't my baby. I'm renting him for my political ambitions." She laughed, thank goodness. And what happened on her doorstep was amazing because we actually spent probably 10, 15 minutes talking about issues that she cared about that perhaps we didn't see eye to eye on, but when we walked away, we had more in common than we had differences. And later on, I actually received a note from her thanking me for coming by her door. And she said this. She said, I didn't vote for you, but the fact that you came by to listen to my concerns is what we need in Salem. Listening can make the difference of what are we really looking at. And perhaps we do have differences, but we have more in common than we do differences. The third concept is tone, and I think this is what Paul means by gentleness. Sometimes incivility is not what we say, but how we say it. Now, being civil doesn't just mean not being a jerk. It doesn't mean not holding someone down. Civility is lifting people up, doing the small things. And that leads me to the fourth concept, and Paul says, be patient, bearing with one another in love. On any topic, you will hear the most weird, wacky, bizarre things. You may even be the subject of incivility. Paul instructs us to exercise patience, because those that are called are patient, bearing with one another in love. It's exercising the characteristics of our calling. Now, like I said at the beginning, civility does not require us to be doormats. You can have strong opinions, you can disagree, we can even have conflict, give negative feedback, but we can do so civilly and with respect. Paul concludes his instruction with this: but to each one of us grace has been given to us as Christ apportioned it. Some of you may remember this incident. In 2012, this is Adam Smith. Adam Smith was a chief financial officer of a medical device company in Tucson, Arizona. In 2012, the chief executive officer of Chick-fil-A made a public statement and position on traditional marriage. This created kind of an outcry, and there was some protest around Chick-fil-A, if you remember. Adam Smith got into the drive-through line in the Tucson, Arizona Chick-fil-A and ordered a large cup of water. And when he got to the window, he encountered Chick-fil-A employee Rachel Elizabeth, and he begins to berate her. This corporation is evil, therefore by association you are evil. How can you live with yourself? How can you work here? And in a moment of irony, he says, the hate has just got to stop. The amazing thing is Rachel stands there and takes it. She says, we're just here to serve you, sir. Well, Adam Smith videoed his encounter with Rachel, and as he drove away, he uploaded the video to his YouTube channel. Adam Smith showed up for work the next day, and he was greeted by the receptionist who said, Adam, what did you do? The voicemail and email is full of bomb threats. His video had gone viral overnight, and now they were facing the backlash. Adam Smith lost his job on the spot. He returned to Chick-fil-A and apologized to Rachel and even posted his own public apology on his YouTube channel. He had lost everything. Not only his job, his stock options, his home, and his anonymity. He actually moved here to Portland in an effort to reset and restart his life, but the video follows him. And when this company discovered that he is the star of the Chick-fil-A video, they let him go. They say, you're radioactive. You're too much of a liability. One act, one moment of incivility changed Adam Smith's life forever. He was asked in an interview, do you regret what you did? And Adam replied, I don't regret the position that I took, but I regret the way I treated her. Rachel is a fellow human being. And he actually went on to say, the golden rule says to treat others the way you would like to be treated. But perhaps it's the reverse. Perhaps we should treat others the way they want to be treated. In this video, I actually debated whether to show it here, but I could only watch it twice because I couldn't be exposed to it that much. But in this video, we actually see Ephesians 4 in action. We see Rachel, who forgave Adam Smith. We see her exercising the traits of humility, gentleness, patience, and grace. When you and I drive through the drive-thrus of life, whether literal drive-thrus or figurative drive-thrus, how will we treat the people at the window? To each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. May we be worthy of that calling. God in heaven, we thank you for your grace. We ask that you empower us and embolden us to live a life worthy of the calling that you have given us. We ask that we will emulate Christ's love and character to everyone that we encounter, and that our lives will be worthy of that call. Amen.